Hey everybody, welcome to episode 7 of Farm Fact Friday. We have Derrick LeClaire and myself, Tanya Franklin here. So Derrick was down in Oklahoma visiting Tana Ag, and we're gonna kind of dig into what all went on and what all happened. And Derrick's gonna start with an introduction of who Tana Ag is and what they do.
Thanks, Tanya. Hi everybody. For 2 weeks there, so the last week of March and the first week of April, I was down in Oklahoma, a little town called Ponca City, which is in northern Oklahoma. So it's only about 25 miles south of the Kansas state line. I went down there to help out our colleagues there, Tyler Knight and Gerald Wines, and with Tana Ag. And Tana Ag, it's a company we acquired. I think it was last year, I believe, right, Tanya? And
Yeah.
they're like an agronomy kind of consulting company. So Tyler, he has customers, and he does fertilizer recommendations, and basically what Veritas started out as fertilizer recommendations and some spraying recommendations. And then Gerald, he's a CCA, a certified crop advisor, and he's the agronomist. So he's the one with the boots on the ground. So he goes out to the fields and scouts and says, "Okay, Tyler, this is what I'm seeing. I think this is what we should do." And then Gerald talks to the customer as well, but Tyler and Gerald, they both relay that information to the customer, like the farmer, and come up with a game plan on what to do. So it was a really cool experience.
Cool. And you took a bunch of videos while you were down there, but it was too windy to
Yeah.
salvage them at this point. What was the weather like down there?
It was kind of all over the place. It was kind of like what we're used to in Ontario. You don't really know what clothes to wear every day. You kind of have to look at the weather. But it was I got down there on a Sunday, and I think Monday was like in the high 60s, low 70s. Tuesday was, I think, 81, and then Wednesday there was a cold front come through Tuesday night with like a thunderstorm, and with that changed the weather drastically. I woke up Wednesday morning, and there was flurries flying in the air. So it went from 81 degrees to flurries in one day. So it was all over the place. But but they're farther south than us, so in general they get warmer weather. And they were actually when I was down there first week of April, there was guys starting to plant corn already, whereas we haven't started that here in Ontario yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And by the looks of the weather, we might not be starting for a little bit longer yet. It's rainy today and snow 2 days ago, and it can leave anytime.
Yeah, for sure. It's that time of year.
Yeah. So while you were down there, I'm sure you experienced a lot of different things because you were there for 2 weeks. What were some of the most memorable moments you had while you were there?
Well, I flew into a town called Stillwater, which is about an hour north or hour south of where I was staying. So with that, I got to Tyler picked me up, and we got to travel an hour's drive, and I got to see some of the countryside. So that was pretty cool. And I guess one of the things that stuck out to me right off the bat was the size of their pastures there. So that's like grassland that cattle or cows feed off of. And it blew my mind how large it was there. Like there'd be like a field where they just threw up a fence and let the cows out. So it was like, I'm just used to a little fenced off area here in Ontario, whereas there they had like a whole field they just threw a fence up and then let the cows out and let them eat. So that was really the start. That really was a big surprise. That was one of the first things I noticed on our drive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that'd be a little bit different to notice as you're driving down the road.
Oh, for sure. It's like what you kind of have the reaction. Oh no, the cows are out. And you're like, oh wait a minute, no, they're just out. They're in between the fences. They're all good. So
Cool. So then, Tyler and Gerald, do they have a specific type of crop that they like to focus on? Do they have like 3 or 4, or do they work with many different kinds of crops?
they work on, I'd say in general. Well, talking to Gerald there, the two biggest crops down there is like I mentioned, pasture with for like forage and that, and then also wheat. It's a big wheat area, so they have soft red wheat, hard red wheat, and because actually the video that we shot that we haven't posted yet because we're trying to get the wind volume down. We were at a wheat plot that my fellow data tech Laura Van Arkel went out. She went down there last fall and helped plant this wheat plot. So that was pretty cool to show how it was progressing. But so yeah, so wheat and grassland like pasture, that's their two biggest areas. And then they also grow corn, soybeans, canola, and cotton. So cotton was a pretty cool crop to see because we'd obviously don't have that in Canada. It's too cold for that crop. So so that was, I actually got to like the season for cotton is like, I think they plant like middle to end of May and then they harvest in September. So I unfortunately wasn't there the time of year when it was growing, but Gerald took me out on the road one day and there happened to be a little a section along the edge of the field where the harvester, the cotton picker, missed a plant. So there was just a stick sitting there with cotton on it. So he ran out, got out of the truck and grabbed it for me. So that was pretty cool to see. So
it's pretty neat when you get to drive around a cotton field, especially when you're from Ontario like us. It's not something you will ever likely see. And it looks dead with a fluff ball on top. Right? You drive by, you're like, what on earth is going on in that field? But it's a neat crop.
For sure. Well, and it's the thing, I guess, that kind of blew me away was like in Ontario there, like probably the crop that we grow that has the most residue, like after the crop is harvested, what's most left in the field is corn, right? And then if you do tillage or something after corn, it can be hard on your tractor tires, right? Because it's pretty like they're pretty tough and everything. But these cotton there, it's literally like a little tree. So I'm like, geez, that's got to be real hard on their tires. Like you're driving over tree branches, pretty much. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Did you notice while you were there? Now the weather was snowing, like you said one day. Is there a lot of difference in tillage practices down in Oklahoma versus Ontario?
Well, I actually asked Gerald this there, and I used the swear word moorboard plow, and I said, does anyone do that down here? And he says no, but also their fields are much in general larger than what we have here, and as you know, Tanya, moorboard plow, that's a slow process, right? So I think a combination of probably the size of the fields, and also I guess they've never really got involved in that too much, but there was a fair bit of no-till there, like no tillage, and then some like probably disking or disc gripping type thing. But yeah, pretty, I'd say similar to Ontario, but a little bit, I'd say in this general area anyway, a little bit more no-till.
Got it.
And their season is long enough that typically in Ontario we'll plant winter wheat after the soybeans are harvested, but since their fall is much longer than Ontario's, they're able to plant wheat with like following corn. So I seen quite a bit of wheat driving around the countryside, and it had corn stalks sticking up like you would because they just went in and no-tilled wheat into corn stalks. So,
yeah, that's a lot different.
Yeah, you wouldn't dare try that here unless you had a real early field, but
yeah, unless you were maybe if you took a high moisture, low heat unit corn off in September, you could maybe try it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not something we do in Ontario, so
no.
But the landscape though is very very similar to Ontario, like southern Ontario. Like it's flat, open, and there's windmills around. It felt like I was in Chatham, Kent. I'm like, darn it, I thought I got away from these blasted things, but no, it looked the landscape is very similar to what I'm used to. So that was pretty cool to see.
What was the soil a lot different or very similar then also to Southwest Ontario?
The one thing, and this is something else I found out from Tyler on our way when he picked me up from the airport on our hour drive to Ponca City, was like their biggest issue down there that they're battling fertility wise is pH. Like they're like in Ontario mainly we do like a lot of variable rate fertilizer like your phosphorus and potash. Well, their soils are very acidic. Like they have pHs like 4.5 to 6, whereas to grow corn, for example, it's probably what 6 to 7 or 6 to 7.5 is probably the sweet spot. I would think, Dana, something like that.
Yeah, well, it depends on what your soil test will say too, right? Here in my area of southwestern Ontario, we have extremely high aluminum levels.
Oh, okay.
So AL3 is extremely toxic to growing plants. Well, AL3 is only available if the pH is below 6.2. So as soon as farmers can increase that pH above 6.2, the pH does not become, or the aluminum, sorry, is no longer a toxicity issue for that growing
Okay.
crop. So
Okay.
on sand ground that has high calcium in my area, pH is an issue and we do have to keep track of it. But a lot of that is because of the aluminum toxicity that comes with the low pH.
So once you reach that 6.2 or lower, you kind of initiate the aluminum there release, and then it becomes toxic.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, like I did some data entry for Tyler one day, and the pH, like for doing some soil sample data entry, and their pHs were like all in the fives, whereas like
Wow.
in this area, like I'm sure we do have some soils on the lower end, but like when I worked in ag retail, it was rare to see very rare to see pH under 5.5. Like even like I guess 5.8 or 5.6 probably or something like that would be the lowest I remember, because some of our soils we don't even have to apply a lime. Like that's what brings the pH up. And we typically, and when I was in ag retail, started about around 6.1. That's when you start applying lime. But if you're down in the 4.5 to 5, you got to apply a lot of lime to bring bring the acidity down in the soil so you can grow a field crop. So
Mm-hmm.
I that was different for me, because usually like pH is just a minor issue, and we have more issues with like nutrients there, like phosphorus, potassium, and even sulfur as well. But yeah, their biggest hurdle down there was pH. So that was cool to hear.
Yeah, and up here, if you have a pH of 5.5 or under, you better be growing blueberries or potatoes because
Yeah.
that's about all you can do.
Well, and I kind of said to Tyler when he told me the pH, I said, yeah, you guys ever thought of growing blueberries down here? And he laughed, and I don't think their soil would support that.
Cool.
And
Oh,
and I guess the difference as well is, uh, like in Ontario, it was all like Carolinian forest and the trees and that at one time, whereas down there, that's what they call the plains. So that's like, so it's flat and it was all prairie or grassland. So similar to Western Canada there, this is just farther south. So
mhm.
so some of these pastures I was seeing where they just put a fence around the grassland, that was like that's been preserved, like that hasn't been disturbed or anything throughout time. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, you wonder how old some of those pastures would be then, right?
Yeah,
Probably hundreds or maybe even thousands of years old.
hmm, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't have that here. Here,
no.
you have an 80-year-old pasture. That's a big deal around
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah, and it was because Gerald that told me there the one time we went by a field, and he said, "No, that's original land. That hasn't been touched, or there's been no steel or iron or anything in there. That's how it was when they settled there." So,
That's pretty cool.
hmm.
That's pretty cool.
And I think that's probably why their soils are different and their pH is different, right? Because different landscape altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Anything else that you thought was really neat while you were down there that you want to share with everybody?
Well, the with the changing landscape and changing land was the different yield values and different land prices. I know when I told them what our land cost up here, they almost fell on the floor. So
Oh yeah, we
Like,
almost do that too when we hear about the prices.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, I know. I hear you. But yeah, I told them probably an most land, or at least in my general area, it could be different up in Elgin County where you are, but I kind of told them around 20,000 an acre is kind of average. And we actually the one day Gerald took me up to Kansas there, so about an hour, I guess 40-minute drive or so. That's where the wheat plot was, where Laura had helped plant. So we went up to Kansas and visited with one of their big customers up there. I think he farms about 15,000 acres, so quite a
Ooh.
big operation.
Yeah.
And we got talking about land values and that. And I kind of asked him after I told him what our land cost, I kind of asked him what it was like in their area. And he said high value land in their area is about $3,500 an acre. And no one will, if someone like with renting land, if someone asks you to pay $50 an acre, they'll hesitate. Like that's too much for them. Whereas
Wow.
like I know like some of the specialty crops there, like in this area, you can pay uh, probably $700 to $900 an acre for land rent, and they're not willing to pay 50 down there. So that was kind of a difference.
Yeah, I think the cheapest land rent I've heard of so far this year is sitting around that $250 an acre. That's the cheapest, if you're growing corn and beans on not so great ground. But everything else is sitting 500 and up.
Yeah, and that's just for cash crop too, right? So
Yeah.
maybe I imagine probably the vegetable land prices have gone up just like everything else. So there might be guys maybe I haven't heard of anyone paying $1,000 an acre, but with everything going up, it could happen soon. So
Yeah, well, down here with the ginseng ground, 2 years ago, ginseng growers were paying $1,000 an acre for rent and locking in for 5-year contracts at that rate.
so wow. Well, and I guess with the you get what you pay for type thing, right? Because our land, I also was shocked when I heard what their yields were down there. Like what's Ontario's corn average around probably 190, 200, or maybe not quite that high.
Yeah, I don't think it would be that high if you count all of the northern corn that's grown too. I would say our average is probably 160, 170.
Okay. Oh, and this immediate area, like Chatham, Kent, or like on our farm anyway, like if we get 220 bushel, we're kind of that was okay. Whereas down there, a good yield for them is the 100 to 130 bushel range.
Oh,
And,
wow,
uh,
really?
and then with wheat around here, like 100 bushel is kind of like you'd like to see. It's nice to get 110 or 120, but down there, a good crop is like 50 bushel an acre, so half
Really?
half the yield. So
That's
basically,
interesting. With the difference in temperatures
mhm,
and peak units, you would think that they would be growing, higher yielding crops
yeah,
than we are up here.
I, I think that does make sense in theory, but I think when you take in the factor in the soil, that's where it kind of gets them. Because I'm not sure exactly if it's like like they don't have sand down there, not what you have, but they're I wouldn't call it like there is areas probably of heavier clay type thing, but they're probably like the loam kind of thing, kind of in between. Like I asked Tyler there what their like cation exchange capacity is, and he said like probably on the high end, like most of it he said was probably under 20, so probably like 17 to 18 on the high end. So that would be considered what like a loam, I guess, type thing. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Somewhere between a silt and a clay loam would be, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm. And also one thing, and I didn't realize this till like the day before I was like come home was their seeding rates are way different than ours. Like they're like I think I have it written down here. Let me just pull it up. I have Aaron gave me a task of coming up with 50 interesting ag things from Oklahoma, and I'm like 50, holy smokes.
Did you did you get all 50 or close?
I'm up to. I think I'm up to about. I think I'm on number 13 right now. Well, I
There you
said
go.
I said to him, I said, could one of the things I learned was that the boss in Oklahoma is much nicer than Chatham. He said, sure. So
We actually love you, Aaron.
yeah. He's not here right now, so I can pick on him. So yeah, so for corn, like in our area, like most of the scripts that like I'm working on actually, well, fertilizer scripts today, but be working on planting scripts probably tomorrow. And probably the average rate would be like in the 32,500 seeds per acre type thing. Whereas talking to Gerald and Tyler, their typical seeding rates for corn are around half of that, so 15,000 seeds per acre.
Hmm.
And for soybeans, we're probably what would be an average there? Probably what 175, 180,000 there, Tanya, you think for soybeans?
Yeah, that's probably around accurate. Yeah.
And down in Oklahoma, they're for soybeans, their seeding rate is around 80 to 100,000. So again,
Wow.
about around half. So that was kind of
Do
surprising.
they
I didn't
do they struggle
that.
with drought conditions in the summer? Is that why their seeding rate is so low, so that they're not plants aren't competing for water?
Yeah, I think that probably has a lot to do with it there. Like they're not uh like they're not in drought as bad as like our friends in Better Harvest there in Texas. Like they like Texas there, they irrigate their crops because it's from what I understand, it's so dry down there that you wouldn't be able to produce a crop or not very good one without water. Whereas Oklahoma, they're kind of they're drier, but they're not so dry that they can't get by. So they don't irrigate down there. So like in Oklahoma. So yeah, I think that probably has a lot to do with it there because the higher population, the more water you need, right, to keep the higher. Basically, if you think of it, you have a party in there. The more people you have, the more food and drink you need, right? So the
Right.
more
Right.
resources. So, and a couple other things I just wanted to quickly mention as well. Look through my list. Um, one cool thing as well that would be unheard of in Ontario or Canada as a whole is they their wheat comes off about a month before us there, so like middle of June, end of June type thing. I guess probably closer to the middle of June, and so they'll plant corn like end of June, early July because they're
So
growing.
after, do they
Yeah,
ever have like a winter downtime, or do they always have a crop in the ground growing, like double cropping?
they do have they do have a downtime there. Like they like once the corn comes off, they might plant wheat and then they let the wheat grow. But when I was like their seasons obviously like their winter's a lot shorter than ours. So like when I was down there in early April, they were they were pretty much wrapped up their nitrogen on their wheat. They were talking about spraying herbicide, and then I heard Gerald mention there the one day he figured in probably 2 weeks. So probably right now, actually, they'd start seeing flag leaves on wheat. So
Wow. Ours is barely turning green.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and the wheat, I should have got pictures while I was down there. The wheat was a lot bigger than ours as well because it has more heat and got started sooner. So.
Mhm.
And to on the corn topic there, the one thing like in Ontario there, our corn like the safe storage moisture for corn is 15%. So 15% of the kernel being water content. So we have our growing season isn't long enough that it can dry naturally. So a lot of farmers, including my dad at our home farm there, we have a corn dryer, so we'll dry our corn and whatnot. But down there, their season is long enough that no one has a corn dryer. They take their corn off at like they out of the field at about 12% moisture.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh, yeah,
so
that's a big difference.
yeah, and then we take it off at like probably well say 20 might be a little on the high end, I guess, depending on where you're at, but 20 I guess is probably pretty standard, 20% moisture. So
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely differences down there, and I'd like to thank Gerald and Tyler there for all the help and support, and it was a good time. I hope to go back again soon, and maybe even if if they dare, if they want to come up north. But I told them to come in the summertime. There, don't come in January or February. You might be a bit of a shock for them. So
Might be the more authentic Canadian experience.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it was funny with the wind. Uh, uh, they said, "Do you guys get this wind in Canada?" And I said, "Yeah, we do. But when you think this wind's bad, well, put some snow on the ground and get this wind." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's true too." So,
Yeah, well,
but,
I mean, today, this past week, the wind we've had over 80-kilometer-an-hour wind gusts up here, which is like 55 miles an hour, and that's actually not atypical, right? In the summer, it kind of calms down a little bit sometimes, but where I live, I have wind every single day. I have never had a non-windy day where I live in the 3 years that I've been here. So,
I bet you it makes spraying a fun job then.
oh yeah, you got to be up before the crack of dawn, before that wind it starts to get going with the heat, right? But yeah, it makes it a challenge, that's for sure.
Well, for sure, yeah. No sleep, no starting at 8 o'clock type thing. Like probably 5 o'clock or whatever, right before the wind and sun gets up. So
Yeah, yeah.
so. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed my trip, and yeah, I'd like to thank Gerald and Tyler there for the great experience, and hope to make it down there again sometime soon.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to Derrick or to Tyler or to Gerald. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions. And stay tuned for next episode, which will be episode 8, probably in 2 weeks, of Farm Fact Friday.
Yep, for sure, and hopefully we got most of the farmers with their scripts and whatnot. They're planting, and then it's nice and quiet, hopefully in the office, and maybe we'll have time to get out of the office and see what's going on in the neighborhood. So
Sounds good to me. Thanks, guys.
all right, take care, guys.